These days, the news is full of war and violence happening. There's a war in Ukraine that is all over the news here in the US. I recently just heard about more violence and tensions rising in Israel Palestine. There is, of course, the genocide watch that's ongoing in India and China, where the Muslims in India and China are under threat. There are thousands of people who are becoming refugees as they escape the violence and poverty that is plaguing Central and South America. I mean, you name it, you look at pretty much any part of the world, and there is war and violence that's happening. And, this is a time where, of course, people like me, people of goodwill, people who believe in peace, who believe in nonviolence, the question comes up, what you teach, does it still matter? In the midst of war and violence, can you even apply these lessons of make change fun and easy and being happy, being nonviolent? And if you say yes, then how do you actually do it? How do you actually apply these ideas and these concepts in these contexts of extreme violence and war that are ongoing? Now, I actually do write about some of this in my book, Make Change Fun and Easy. But I know most of you probably may not have read my book as yet. I just wanted to share with you some of the key lessons that I talk about in the book and apply them particularly in the context of our current circumstances with all of this ongoing news of war and violence, and not just news, but the lived experience that so many millions upon millions of people are going through in their everyday lives. So, my favorite way of getting any kind of insight, wisdom, is to connect with my spiritual heart and just ask my spiritual heart what there is for me to understand and to learn and to do at any given point in time, especially in a time when I'm struggling or any kind of confused. And so I connected with my heart again, and I was like, Heart, I truly believe that even in the context of war and violence that we're seeing now, these ideas that I talk about in my book and my podcast, Make Change Fun and Easy, I do believe that these ideas apply and can be applied and utilized to help us create more ease, to create more inner peace, create more justice for us all. So please guide me. It's like, what is the central lesson that I need to be understanding and paying attention to right now? And so my heart said, oh, remember, one of the most important principles of how to make change fun and easy is actually to create change with love. Create change with love. And that is a principle that is not only applicable in such times, but it is actually necessary for us to apply in such times with even more diligence, with even more consciousness, with even more commitment, if we have any hope to be able to achieve true peace and true justice for ourselves and for our communities, for our world. And so when you think about applying the principle of creating change with love, what are we talking about? How do you do that? So I do talk about this in a lot of detail in my book, Make Change Fun and Easy, but I will share just some of the main ideas with you right now. So main idea number one that I talk about in the book and that my heart reminded me of to share with you right now is number one, the idea of not villainizing anyone. It's like, we have all done things that we don't love about about ourselves, or when we do certain things that we have done. There, we all have these experiences of having done things that we don't love, that we're not proud of. True or true, right? And yet, we figure out a way to create peace with ourselves, to forgive ourselves, and to continue to live our lives, right? And insofar as we value living with peace and harmony with ourselves, with our own selves, we figure out how to do it, how to make it happen, even though it may not be easy for us to reconcile with our own past. It may not be easy for us to forgive ourselves for some things that we have done that we believe and know were very, very wrong, right? But we figure out how to do it because, well, what other choice do we have? We can't escape from ourselves. We have to live with ourselves, right? Um, and insofar as we want to be able to do so peacefully, we figure out a way to do it. Oh, and I just saw a few people came online. Eric, Raymond, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so appreciative. Feel free to put anything in the chat, and if I don't get to see what you chat in now, I'll be sure to respond to your chat later. But one of the most important things that we have to do, right, to create change with love is to find compassion and empathy, right? It's like you don't villainize, you find compassion and empathy for whoever you may be feeling that sense of anger or hatred towards. So for me right now, I was thinking, okay, who am I feeling angry towards? Who am I feeling not compassionate and empathy towards right now? And the first person that popped into my mind was Putin. It's like, what in the world is that man doing? You know, he's like creating so much destruction, spreading so much misery and violence, not just in Ukraine, by the way. The people in Russia are also suffering so much because of his leadership and where he's taking the country and his people, right? People in other parts of the world are also suffering because of what he is doing. And so, it's so easy on the one hand for me to like slip into that way of thinking, and then I lose all my sense of empathy and compassion for him, right? And so I had to connect with my heart and be like, heart, please tell me, what is there for me to learn and understand about what Putin's going through right now, what he's experiencing, and what, just give me some sense of empathy and compassion for him. And what I learned is that Putin is actually scared. He is afraid. Underlying is action, everything that he's doing, there is a fear. And the fear that he's dealing with, that he has actually been dealing with for a long, long time, is that he's not enough. He is not enough. Even with all the power in the world that he has, all the influence that he feels not enough. And he's trying to actually do something about it. He's trying to not live, just live and suffer the feeling of that fear. He is actually trying to take some action to relieve himself of that fear by doing what he thinks will help relieve that fear. And right now he's thinking, okay, if I grab even more power, if I grab even more influence, then I can begin to feel enough. So that's where he's coming from. And just to understand that, just to know that about him, just put me in a whole different mind frame. So, like, when I start to think now about, well, what are the solutions for how we can respond to this situation, this war, this violence that he is perpetuating, very different ideas begin to come to my mind, right? And of course, my heart. But before we talk about the solutions, let me share with you one more insight that my heart shared with me about what's happening with Putin. So my heart shared that Putin is, as he said, he is actually doing what he can with what he knows to try and relieve his feelings of fear of not being enough. And so, in some ways, for him, he's actually making progress relative to the condition where he felt that fear of not being enough, and he was not doing anything about it. He was trying to deny it, suppress it, or just feel the anxiety and the stress that it created for him, and so on and so forth, right? So, in some ways, he's actually making progress for him. The problem is that the path that he has chosen to try and relieve this fear and to solve this problem that he has is a path that is doomed to failure. It's never going to lead him to success. It's never actually going to make him feel not afraid. It's never actually going to allow him to feel enough. And the thing is that in some ways, he's absolutely right that he is not enough. His fear is not like he's just a crazy person. There's a very good reason for why he's feeling afraid, because in a way, at a certain level, he's absolutely right that he is not enough and he's never going to be enough. And what do I mean by that? In what context is that true? That is true in the context of him living his life in a way where he's disconnected from his spiritual self, from his spirituality, from being tapped into the abundance of the spiritual universe, right? Because he's all in his head and he's disconnected from his heart. And when you're disconnected from your heart, your spiritual heart, from your spiritual source, from the abundance of the spiritual universe, then you can never be enough. Because in your human body, in your human self, as your human self in this human body, you're always just a tinsy tiny part of the whole. And no matter how good you are, how strong you are, how much you have accomplished as this tinsy tiny part of the whole, the thing is you will always have limits. to how much power you're able to exercise or experience or feel, or how much abundance or success you're able to experience, feel. You'll always be limited, because you will always be only that part. You see? And your soul, my soul, our soul craves to be connected to the greater whole. So, you see, that's where the solution truly lies. For Putin, for you, for me, for any of us who are feeling that fear of not being enough, the solution isn't to try and grab more power in this world, in the context of the material world, because that will never be enough. Okay? But the thing with Putin is that he actually has a wonderfully resilient mind. When I say wonderfully resilient mind, I mean that he's not going to give up very easily. He's going to meet disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, and he's not going to let that stop him. As long as he can see an option to keep moving forward in some way or the other, he's going to keep doing that. He's not going to give up. He's not going to turn back. Right? And in some ways, that is a wonderful quality. The problem, again, is that he's on the wrong path. He's just on the wrong path. The path that he's on, there's no way he's actually going to be able to achieve what he really, really wants and needs, right? And that is to feel enough and to be able to release the fear that he feels. So now we have this sense of empathy and compassion, I hope, for him. I know I feel more of that now for him, for sure. And so it's like, okay, what do we do now? What's the solution here? How can we help him? How can we help ourselves? Right? What's a win-win solution here? And so my heart said that because of the state that Putin's in, because he's, being so resilient and not willing to give up and turn back, reconsider where he's headed, we just have to go into a mode of complete non-cooperation with him. We have to immediately stop enabling him from achieving any kind of success in his goals and his intentions, because his goals and his intentions are such that they're completely taking him in the wrong direction, and they're causing so much destruction and suffering for everyone else. And they will for him too, actually. Intensify his suffering and his fear and his feelings of not being enough are actually, he's on that path where he's actually making things worse for himself as well. And so the best, most kind, most compassionate thing that we can do for him and to solve this problem for the rest of us is to be in a state of complete non-cooperation with him. So do that in whatever way you can do that. How can you withdraw your cooperation from him? How can you stop enabling him from fulfilling his current intentions, and stop him from moving any further in his current path? Because again, as long as he can see even a single option for moving forward on this path, he's going to keep trying to do that. Okay. And so we have to literally cut off every possible option for advance for him on this path. And only when he can see no path forward is there any chance for him to maybe then take another look at where he is and where he was trying to go and head. And maybe if he can find at that point some sense of humbleness, some sense of connection to his spirit, to his spiritual self, to his heart, he may come to accept the situation, the reality of what is, and change course. Maybe we can hope for his sake, if he is to have any chance at all of redemption, of actually heading in the right direction for him and for everyone else. You know, he has to experience that pit. Okay. So experiencing that kind of a pit, at the one hand, you know, like it's like, whoa, that feels so horrible. How can you wish that on someone, want that for someone? Would I ever want that for me? But that's the thing, that sometimes we have to experience that pit. We have to land in that pit before we are willing to open ourselves up to any other possibilities. It doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't have to be that way. Like we have the capacity, we have the potential to learn and to realize and to change directions to a better way much sooner than we hit the pit. We have that potential, we have that capacity, but sometimes we're just not willing to do that. We're not able to do that because we're so driven by our fears. And so when we are in that state, actually the kindest thing that we can, or the best thing that can happen for us at that time, is to just end up in that pit. Okay, so that's basically the main one of the main lessons. And the other just really quick lesson that I will share with you, that I talk about in my book, Make Change Fun and Easy. In the chapter, I actually talk about this idea of how do you apply this principle of creating change with love throughout the book. But there is one specific chapter that I write in the book where I talk specifically about creating change with love. And one of the other, I think, really important insights to highlight right now is just this idea that actually Martin Luther King, he expressed so beautifully in his one of his essays, um, where he talked about how, you know, when we're talking about loving our enemy, when we're talking about even loving those who are committing injustice and so forth, or oppressing us or others, it's not reasonable for us to expect to be able to feel the same kind of love for them that we feel for our friends, for our family, you know, that love that manifests in us as that kind of warm and fuzzy feeling, you know. It's not reasonable for us to experience that kind of a love for everyone in every situation. But that's not the only kind of love that there is. You know, there's also the love that is born of compassion and empathy, right? And that love born of compassion and empathy is something that we can experience and practice for everyone and in every given situation, right? And what I was just sharing with you right now about, you know, how I connected with my heart to try and gain and some insight about Putin and his state, and how we can, you know, do what we can do to help him and ourselves in this situation. That was a practice in practicing this kind of love, where, you know, you are practicing the love of being in a state of empathy and compassion for everyone and everything, even in these most difficult seeming, difficult feeling situations. And the thing is that when you practice this kind of love, actually, you also begin to experience more ease in your life. You also begin to open up the possibility of even experiencing some maybe happiness in in these difficult times of your life, experiencing some fun in these difficult times in your life. And you know why that is so important? Because you see, you want to raise your energetic vibration to the highest levels that you can, levels of gratitude, levels of peace and joy. Because when you raise your vibration to these higher levels of being, ah, you're connecting even more deeply and effectively with your own spiritual source, your own ability to tap into the abundance of the universe, right? And so then the solutions that you seek, that you need, that you desire will come to you that much more easily. Even if you have to take some very difficult action in this quest to be in a state of non-cooperation and resistance to this war and violence, you know, you will find yourself being able to do it with greater ease and find that you are achieving greater success in all of your efforts because you are more connected with the abundance of the universe, with your spiritual source, with your spiritual strength, right? And so then the rules of the game change for you, the possibilities change, like what is even possible for you just changes when you're able to tap into that source of strength. Think of stories from like the Bible and the Quran of, for example, the story of Moses, right? Our Jewish brothers and sisters, my gosh, this weekend, it's Passover for them, right? And so it's a time of reflection on the story of the Passover. And just think about how the people, the Jews, you know, they escaped the Pharaoh, right? And they found freedom in these extremely difficult circumstances, and how things were made easy for them in some ways. I mean, of course, there was still at one level, they were still struggling, they were still running, they were still in this process of escaping. But like literally, the seas parted. Literally the seas parted to give them a way to escape. Right? I mean, talk about ease being created. Talk about the possibilities of what is even possible for you changing, to create more ease for you, to, you know, find that freedom to make that escape from that oppression and whatever else it is that you were needing to escape from, right? And so when you are connected with your spiritual self, your spiritual source, spiritual wisdom, you raise yourself up to these higher levels of energetic vibration. For sure, you can make change more fun and more easy for yourself, even in these more difficult of times. So I wish that for you. I wish that for me. And until we connect next time, I just wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.